I'd like to welcome everybody that came to the October general membership meeting for the Commercial Real Estate Alliance. Thanks to everybody for attending today. We're really excited about this Florida legislative update and kind of what it means for commercial real estate and folks in our line of work and what's going on at the state level. In putting together the curriculum and meetings for the entire year. We always kind of look forward to the legislative update, or I do at least. And I think it's what? That's what you'll sign. You look forward to it. Well, I think it's important for us as professionals, whether we're on the lending side or the selling side or representing property manager in property management, whatever function within the Commercial Real Estate Alliance. It's important to have an understanding of what's going on, and so we want to make sure that our membership has access to that information. And we're really lucky to have the Shumaker team that's able to give us an inside look on that. Want to remind everybody every time we get together that we have a mission, we have our objectives, and making a stronger, better commercial marketplace locally needs to be the goal and outcome of every time we get together. It's fun. Putting together deals and hanging out, but as we get together, we just need to remember what our mission is and strive towards those objectives. Mm-hmm. As always, I'd like to thank our sponsors, our gold sponsors, Berlin Patton, Evening, Sable Palm Bank and Center State, our silver sponsors, Shumaker, Loop and Kendrick, and thanks for being here today. Synovus Bank and Atlas Insurance, as well as our bronze sponsors, Gulfside Bank, Lakewood Ranch Commercial, Iberia Bank / First Horizon, and Achieva Credit Union. Thank you for good. I say this all the time, but it's the money that they apply in that allows us to go out and be more effective in fulfilling those objectives and the mission statement. So we just want to say thank you to our sponsors. We appreciate what you're doing. I believe William just finished up a new sponsorship package for 2022. And encourage you guys to get out within your circle of influence and whatnot, and make sure that people are aware of the sponsorship opportunities for next year. Okay, and with that, I'm going to introduce Rico, who is going to present the slate of officers and directors for 2022.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's been so long since I've been here, and I guess I don't even know what to do anymore. I've got to stand over here so that you can see me. Okay. So I was part of the nominating committee, and so I'm here to announce the slate of officers and directors for 2022 CREA Board of Directors. The officers are President will be Ben Bacher. President-elect will be William Wilson. Vice President, Matt Fensky. Treasurer, Tom Johnson. Director will be Barbara Williams, and I saw her this morning. And hire, please. There she is. Ken Swan and Melissa Harris. And we'll open up the floor for any nominations from the floor. Does anybody have any nominations? If not, then we'll close that, and then we will be having our November meeting will be the election of these and just confirmation of this slate. Okay. Anyway, a big round of applause for these people that are going to be serving next year.
Thank you, Rico. I appreciate the work that you and the nominating committee did to try to vet out candidates and encourage participation. I want to remind everybody that just because you're not an officer or director doesn't mean you can't participate and volunteer within the organization. We have lots of committees and subcommittees and task forces that are on the slate for this upcoming year, and that's the best place to get involved and then kind of move through the ranks and become an officer or director. So thanks in advance for everybody's participation in the committees as well. Okay, and with that, I get to introduce Erin to introduce our speakers today.
Hello. So what we have Amy Maguire and JD White with Shumaker Advisors, and each of them have over 20 years of extensive lobbying experience in local, state, and federal government issues. And I will let them talk more particularly about that. Here you go.
Or actually, do I turn this off or I'll just keep it because I think he's got it right there. Got it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having us today. It's so nice to see people in person, and it's nice to be here and virtually. I know we have a couple online too. I am Amy Maguire, and I'm with Shumaker Advisors. We thought we'd take you through a little bit of who we are to frame the discussion, and then really we have a few things to share, but much like your business, our business changes very frequently. So we're just going to give you the shell of what we know today, and then we can open up to some conversation and some of what's important to you all. So we are a full public relations, government relations, B2B, business to government firm. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of Shumaker Law, and we lobby on the local, state, and federal levels. Locally, Sarasota, Manatee, South, through Polk, Pasco, Hillsborough, Panelists. So we're pretty broad, and of course, in the state level, represent a variety of clients there, from environment to real estate, and so our list is kind of long. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time. Okay, good, doing it right. I wanted to talk about our team. This is hot off the press. A week ago, we added 2 new members of our Tallahassee team to run the shop in Tallahassee. Alan Susky had his own firm and joined us a week ago, and it's really exciting to see he and his partner RJ. So I wanted to show a couple of these just to show you our Tallahassee office and who's leading that. JD and I live in Tampa Bay, but we travel up there whenever the legislators are there. But Alan and his team live up there, so happy to be involved with them. And this is an exciting slide that I just wanted to reference because you can see the depth and the breadth of what we offer. And I share this with you for your own, and for you have people that need help in Tallahassee or in DC. We have county commissioners that you all may or may not know from Hillsborough, Sandy Merman and Les Miller, both of whom served in the Florida House and the Florida Senate in leadership roles. So they are great advisors and help us navigate a lot of very tricky bills and funding and ideas. We also have Congressman David Jolly, who you may be aware, he helps with our federal practice. Mike Hamby, Mark Sanford, you can see the long list there that we have on our federal practice too. And then the same with local, and I know you all have a lot of local issues. I think I recall one we talked about when we did this virtually last year. So we spend a lot of our time on local legislative and policy issues. So what we thought we would do is talk a little bit about briefly what happened. The legislative session certainly wrapped up, and it seems like it was 100 years ago, but it really was just this past May. And the new year for the state government went into effect July 1 with some bills, and then October 1 with other bills. Some of the key areas that you saw, certainly safety. How many times did you open up the paper and hear about new safety precautions, not as it related just to COVID, but as it related to our police, to our fire, to I'll call it rioting, although just don't know if that's the perfect example, but the anti-riot bill is what it became named, House Bill 1, which passed and went into effect. Certainly workforce, if any of you saw some of the most, I think, powerful legislation that was passed out of this session as it relates to business owners and why companies want to come to Florida, is what we're doing with workforce. And you have leadership in the House and the Senate and the governor's office help fund programs like Career Source, which you all are familiar, and I see some nods, very important partner to your businesses as they come to this area to know Career Source and to know how their business can work with Career Source on training. I think you're going to continue to see that as a big priority as we move into this next session. And we know all the obvious reasons why training a workforce from high school through college and then certainly into the workforce. The environment, one of the biggest years that was spent on not only the cleanup, which I know you all are very familiar with, just north of you, but certainly with just other environmental issues. This governor has proven to be very interested in the environment, water issues, water conservation, public lands conservation. So I think we're going to see more of that as we move forward. Education, giving pay raises for our teachers, how to recruit teachers, how to train teachers. We're part of the budget this year, along with some legislative priorities. And then healthcare, COVID, I can mention that 1,000 times, but I think that that's going to be an ongoing challenge we have this next year, is how we keep that workforce in our hospitals and healthcare providers. think I mentioned, or someone mentioned to me, they had one of their biggest deals was a healthcare. We also see some more of that healthcare companies coming into Florida. We're gonna see more of that. Our regulations have relaxed for certificate of need and for other ways, so I think we're gonna see more of that. This is a snapshot. I know this is a busy snapshot, but we really just wanted to show you the budget that was passed, some of the pockets and how that was spent. I touched some of them, state employee pension, pay raises. You can see a breakdown of the environment and what we're doing in that space. So I know there's a lot there. We're happy to share this slide with you if it's anything that you all need for your clients, if it's anything that you need to have other talking points. So Carolyn can let us know, or Tiffany can share it with you all. I want to turn it over to JD, if I can introduce my partner here, to talk some on the federal side and what we're seeing, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit on the state.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you for having me. My name is JD White. I'm with Shumaker Advisors. I was glad to be home. I grew up in Sarasota, middle school and high school, went to Florida State, and then headed to DC and spent 10 years in DC. The federal government is such an interesting body. You really have so much going on at the federal government at all levels and in every agency. But right now in Congress, there's two main things that you've probably seen on the nightly news or see in some of your update newsletters. There's what's called the infrastructure deal and budget reconciliation. And think back to when Obama got elected. You heard people talking about, we need infrastructure projects. We need to fund infrastructure. Our roads and bridges are crumbling. Well, that has been going an ongoing theme for 8 years with Obama, for 4 years with Trump, and now with President Biden. And while everyone talks about the need and how great it would be to put money towards infrastructure projects, it's really been tough in a divided Congress to catch agreement. And I think we're right at that point now where we are going to invest about $1.2 trillion in infrastructure across the country. Of course, politics is always playing a role in DC. And so right now there's a little bit of gamesmanship. I expect that within the next month or so, maybe within the next week, we should have a deal on infrastructure. But some of the big buckets that would be important for your industry and your clients are things like what I said: roads, major investment in roads, public transit, electric buses, rail, electric vehicles, and the infrastructure that it takes to have electric vehicles, have a network around the country. Airports, water systems that are crumbling, internet and broadband for rural areas. But if you think about your clients and the amount of money that's going to be flowing into communities in infrastructure, this is an important big deal for Congress to pass. Tied to that, and again, the Democrats are hinging everything. There's a little bit of a political theater going on with progressive Democrats wanting a big, you've probably heard it termed Green New Deal, and Republicans saying, whoa, that's a little bit too much money. And so there's this political game going on right now, but I think we're going to end up, like I said, in the next 30 days with a deal to spend about $2.5 trillion on other, what we consider human infrastructure projects. So it's a lot of money, and the pay-fors, how we pay for it is very interesting. But let me point out a few things that you might be interested in. So they're going to suggesting that we put $332 billion into the Housing Trust Fund to expand affordable housing for folks. That brings more workforce into our urban cores to help with commercial and businesses, corporate businesses. We have credits for small banks, so more access to more credit for small and community banks. That's good for the business community. Then you move to kind of more of the progressive side: clean energy, universal pre-K, expansion of the child tax credit, paid family leave, Medicare expansion for vision and dental. And all of this is potentially going to be paid for through debt financing and also raising the corporate tax rate, which Republicans are really fighting against. But that's just a snapshot. Overall, for us, we're going to see direct investments coming into our community if this passes, and I suspect it will by the end of the year.
We can, why don't we pause and see if there are any questions on the federal side right now specifically, or what are you hearing?
I just have a really obvious ignorant one. So if they pass all this money,
Right.
How does the state or local people, how does it help us, especially since politically,
Right.
there might be some tension?
And this is a 10-year budget window that we're talking about, but a lot of this money is going to flow down through states and local government. So is it, some questions, right? You want to talk about how you've seen it flow through the states in your career?
Yes, and so the question was, I should repeat it too, how does that funnel down? So we know we're gonna have this federal funding, what does it look like? The states need to work with the agencies. So you think about, I'll just use Department of Transportation. JD mentioned EV, electric vehicles. Are you all seeing that everywhere? Because that is going to be a really big business for our state in the next few years. I think you're going to see it out of the state legislature, and I think there's going to be that federal opportunity. So how our state legislature body, the governor's office, works with DC is really the way that money's passed down. When they pass this law, and hopefully they'll do it by December 31st in this funding package, there'll be some criteria and some guidance on how the states can capitalize on it. Do they like Republican governors more than Democrat? I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes out, but we are the third largest state, right? Population. So I think that that's going to be an important piece of the funding that we get.
And I do think that Florida is a business friendly state if you're talking about across the nation. And so our governor, our legislature will look to pull down some of that money so that it specifically entices companies and businesses to move from other parts of the country to Florida. We rightly or wrongly, we are a growth state. We take advantage of no income tax, and we use that to our advantage when we're promoting the state. Our legislators are going to create policy that helps pull down that money as efficiently as possible and gets it to local and state resources, right?
Perfectly said. Yeah. Other questions?
On the federal level, could you talk a little bit about, there's been a lot of people projecting that 1031s as a tax deferment method might go away. Also some discussions about the ability to reset upon passing and inheritance tax, et cetera, that reset going away, or some other things. Those are drivers of transactions for a lot of the people in this group. Could you talk what you're hearing about where that's going to settle in the fund side of the infrastructure bill?
Everything is on the table right now, and there's literally a back room where Senate and House staff are sitting negotiating this out. I think where we're advantaged here is that the Senate and the House are both so narrowly divided. And so you're going to have, they need every single vote in both bodies essentially. And what I think you're going to do is on 1031s and other vehicles to pay for, you're going to have a constituency that says, no, we're not using that because that's not going to work for my state or my district. And so what often happens is they steal from other little pots, to help pay for. And then what you've seen, honestly, over the last 20 years is we're just going to print more money. We're going to create more debt service, and that's how we're going to pay for it. And the macro environment, economic environment is going to be ginned up so much that we're going to hope to recoup that through taxes. But I'll actually look into that and maybe send you an email if I see anything specific on some of those pay fors.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I was talking to a financial advisor this morning, who came up with a pretty eye-watering statistic that over the last 18 months, 34% of all the dollars in circulation have been printed. So effectively, if you said that the pot was $100 million, we've printed 50 million. So they've increased the pots by 34% in the last 18 months. How the hell are we going to pay that back?
Yeah,
Children and grandchildren. and-
Yeah,
That's a great question.
and it really does span both parties and 20 years of history. I remember when I started in Congress, they used to have these little digital clocks. It was called the debt clock outside of some members' offices, and it would just continue to spin and spin up. And it would talk about everyone's per capita responsibility. It really has been, it has gone away from Washington talk for a number of years. And I don't know about you, but it's going to have to be a reckoning at some point, and I just don't know when that will be.
Yeah, the PPE,
Yeah.
they're still trying to figure out who's gonna get what, where, when. And I would assume this is even gonna be worse than that as far as the distribution system. I mean, when they even talk about the 80, I couldn't believe Sarasota County got 85 million. Yeah, and if you think, okay, we got that much, you know,
Right.
I mean, you built, it doesn't even make sense.
Well, and also consider, and I don't know the statistic, it's an outdated one, how many were forgiven? So how many of those organizations, remember, that were forgiven of their PPP funds?
The interesting thing about that 85 million, when it was received, there was no plan. There was no, here's 85 million, and
Right.
it kind of went into the black hole of the county. And until Argus and some of the other people started asking, what are you gonna do with that? We don't know.
You know, it's
And they
interesting.
still don't know.
It's so interesting you bring that up. We were just talking about this prior to everyone sitting down. That's why these luncheons are so important, or that's why your engagement is so important, that you all are making those calls to ask. I forgot the number that came down to our school systems across the state, some of which has not fully come down. I could tell you there's a pot for everything that we're questioning. How is that going to be used? And so it's really incumbent upon you as business leaders to ask those questions and to ask them of your legislators, of your mayors, of your county, because there's a lot happening in Florida and you want it to continue to grow, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think you have described the reconciliation bill rather benignly. A lot of people don't even, I don't know if anybody really knows what's in the whole bill.
Not yet.
We wouldn't blame you.
There's a lot of social programs.
Sure.
As far as taxing is concerned, they're talking about being that they're getting pushback from a certain senator. I forget her name. I always have a problem pronouncing her name about taxes. They said, well, you know, we're going to back off on that, but we do want access to your bank accounts, your personal bank accounts, to catch tax cheats. They started out with anything over $600 they wanted to be able to look at. Well, now they backed off and said, well, anything over 10,000. They're not talking about $10,000 transactions. They're talking about $10,000 worth of total activity in your bank account for a year. Who doesn't have less, who has less than $10,000 in the bank account for a year? It goes on and on and on. It's a total sham. And I think it needs to be defeated. And I think the only salvation of this country is to have it defeated.
Well, the nice thing is that we're moving to talking about state government.
There we go.
Where we have a requirement to have a balanced budget, and we can't spend more than we take in. So at least in the state of Florida, we're
At
doing
least in
good.
the state of Florida. So we wanted to talk briefly about some of what we might expect. And certainly you all may know that the legislature has even and odd times that they convene in Tallahassee. And next year they will start in January. So being an even year, they do January and February, odd years, March and April. So there's a short window between when they left Tallahassee and when they'll be back. Committee meetings started a few weeks ago, back in October, and they are obviously trying to hammer out a lot, one of which we're really going to talk to you about, which is the redistricting. But before we get to that, there is a special session that is being discussed for next week. I think the details are to come. The governor has called that, if you're not familiar, to discuss the mask mandates. I don't know any more details than that right now.
Vaccine mandates and masks are going to be on the docket, and whether, and what we've heard so far is that they're going to be silent on private sector businesses on vaccine mandates, and there may be what they're going to focus on public sector employees. And if someone gets terminated because of their vaccine status, some prohibitions against that, and maybe some recourse legally against that. So.
We really want to spend a few minutes before we get onto some of the policy issues that we're talking about, is looking at the legislative calendar I just mentioned. If you have issues that you think you want to get in front of the legislature, now is the time, and that needs to be really before that committee meeting in December wraps up. The bill filing deadlines are staggered, but just know that if there's something pending that you all are really interested in, I think Max is your local GR manager. Make sure he has his legislative priority forward and ready to talk about that with all of our great legislators from here. And as you all know, we do have many in leadership, from Senator Gruder, Senator Jim Boyd. We have on the House side, Fiona McFarland, James Buchanan, Tommy Gregory, Will Robinson. I think you all know all these folks, but if you don't, they're solid and they're here to help. So I would encourage you to reach out to them. And then session will start in January, and hopefully vetoes and everything will be done April and May. But the big issues will be, we think, around workforce again, around education, environment. Sounds familiar, right? Healthcare, safety and privacy. You can expect more privacy bills coming out next year, we expect, based on the leadership questions and some things that moved and stalled this past year. And I think you'll see a state that looks to want to make sure we keep doing what you are seeing, which is recruiting businesses from other states to move here. Now, this big piece I'm going to give to JD, but this is by which all things will be determined. Has anybody heard about redistricting? How, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, what do you think you know about redistricting? How comfortable are you with explaining redistricting? Oh, you're to 2. All right, good. Well, JD is here to educate you, and you're going to leave being like, are you kidding?
No. So everyone hears about the census that happens every 10 years, right? And given the politics in this room, maybe people don't, there's some thoughts on the redistrict or the census, but really reapportionment and redistricting is the way that we equalize population. We all know that Florida is growing. We have every 10 years go out and count everyone, and that has led us to the data that shows that we are, I can't quite see that big enough, but my eyes are on that. But we have grown. One of the fastest areas of growth is the I-4 corridor. I consider Sarasota part of kind of the Tampa MSA, but this whole corridor has received a lot of population growth, and therefore the lines are going to change. So your Congress folks, your state and Senate and House are going to change, and this process is on paper supposed to be very boring and rudimentary, but it ends up being very political, as you can imagine, and a lot of self-interest involved. What's on the next slide? Let's see that. The highlights of the population growth, right? So the demographics of Florida is changing, of course. You can see some of the statistics, and the villages is the fastest growing population in the entire country, I think. So we have some distinction here. Here's what happens. So the census goes out and they send their data to the state legislature. That came out in September. Our legislature meets in committee weeks and they review kind of where the population growths have gone, and they start drafting maps. And those maps are put out in committee weeks and to the public as where the lines are going to change and where we're going to go as a state, where the population, it follows population growth, right? In this January or February, we should start seeing maps. So, for example, all your local, state and federal representatives, their districts are going to change a little bit. So you may or may not be in a district that you'll be in a few months from now. That process is then really behind closed doors for the last few months, and you have a little bit of self-interest. Like I said, politicians may want to run for higher office or may want to disadvantage another party. But I think what you'll see is we're going to gain 1 congressional seat in the state. So we're going to go from 27 to 28, I think. And you'll see the Republican-dominated legislature in both the House and the Senate potentially grow a little bit more Republican-dominated because they have the ability to create the lines. They're in the majority. But I wouldn't expect too much, because the number of total seats in the House and the Senate doesn't change. It's just where districts lines are drawn. So thoughts?
Well, that will beg the question that there is some discussion that the Republicans will take back the U.S. House, and some thought that we would possibly have a local congressman here that would be in leadership for future. So I think that all things look really good for I think Florida and for Sarasota, Manatee County.
Yeah, traditionally, the incoming president, so the President Biden, who was just elected, the off-year election, so the non-presidential election, the House, the party that's in charge, which is now Democrats, you typically loses between 20 and 40 seats. This year, I think the predictions are similar, maybe somewhere between 10 and 30. So if we follow historical trends, you'll see House Republicans take back over the House of Representatives and Congress, and the Senate flip to Republican control. Now, we all know that the Senate, you need 60 votes in the Senate to be really in control. But what I think you'll see is this natural flip of our political parties in control this coming November. But we expect in Florida everything to kind of remain the same, Republican control. Governor DeSantis is up for re-election, as well as all the cabinet members. So Ashley Moody, Jimmy Petronas, and Nikki Fried is running, and the state agriculture commissioner is running for governor. So we'll have potentially our current Senate president, state Senate president, running for that seat, and being our new agriculture commissioner, which, you know, I think is fairly consistent with a Republican-dominated cabinet and governor's office.
Representative Johnson over there in your previous days, were you in the House during redistricting at any point?
I was. I actually tried to get into the reinforcement suite one time. The door was locked. I don't remember.
But you say exactly what is true, which is you all can already sense this, right? There's a lot of perhaps self-interest as it relates to what will my district look like, and maybe if I want to run for Congress or Senate, a lot of those questions. And of course, I can't even project what the lawsuits will look like, but I think it all has to be done by filing, which is June 23rd. That's right. So remember, we have election, we'll have primaries in August, we'll have a general in November. So a lot has to happen pretty fast. And there are war rooms that are created with all these maps. So
Maybe if I could just say, it, I just told Janet, reapportionment, we don't hear much about it, is the most political of all the political activities.
and it is funny, when we talked about, when JD and I were putting together sort of the priorities for next year, all the slide before we started talking about this almost doesn't matter because it really matters. These sometimes govern some of those decisions that are made on workforce or environment, budget, certainly. And I want to reiterate too, we are $8 billion up in this state. Our budget's looking pretty good. That does include federal funding. So I don't want to make it sound like we're flush, but I think we're doing okay. And thanks to you all for bringing in a lot of companies from around the country too.
And I would say it doesn't affect probably each individual person tremendously. I mean, you may see your state rep that change a little bit, or your member of Congress, depending on your address. But overall, for the state, it is a big deal. We're adding, like I said, one member of Congress, and we're potentially changing the balance of power to more to one party or the other. So it is very political, and all of us will feel the repercussions of this process.
I think we just had, this was just us, and then we wanted to just really open it up to what questions you have. Can we answer anything that you're hearing about, or is there something you would like more information on as it relates? Right now, while a lot of bills have been discussed, I would say that filing, they're sitting in bill drafting now. So we haven't really seen a whole lot. We did some word searches and some things to try to be more pertinent to your topics. But it's really new and early, but we do weekly updates. So we'll share it with you and you can forward it out. And if there's specific interests that you all don't hear about, let us know. Questions, thoughts?
I'd like to hear a bit more about inflation, because for the first time since I've lived here 7 years, I saw gas at $4.01 a gallon the other day, and my 6 eggs at Walmart have gone up from 55 cents to 94 cents. I mean, inflation is real and it's impacting everybody. It might only be 50 cents here and 50 cents there, but when you get a few billion of those together, it makes an impact.
It's so real. Just coming down today, I was listening to a panel on CNBC, comments on the Fed chair, and that there are so many different versions of what that looks like. But I would say in the last 2 weeks, we've seen some federal more openness to the fact that it is happening. Certainly we feel it. And I would say on the social side, I started out this conversation talking about workforce and the challenges we have there. That is being passed around and across. The inflation is hitting, I think, at every level. I've seen it too. I don't know if we're calling it pure inflation yet. Any thoughts on that? Or?
No, I mean, it's a significant issue, and I think it will continue. There's going to be a market correction here at some point with Fed interest rates, but no, I mean, it's very real, and I think it's starting to be talked about at the federal level quite a bit. One of the things that we didn't mention, but the real estate sales tax on rents are consistently being dropped from our Florida legislature, right? And I think we will, I'm sure that you are an advocacy voice in continuing that trend. We're going to have, for a variety of factors, some money coming in from the federal government, but also a better economic outlook. We're going to have a lot of money available in the treasury of the state of Florida. So I would encourage that we continue that push to reducing that sales tax rate for commercial properties, because we have a willing legislature, and if we can further tamp that down this year, I think we'd be in a good position.
Well, in the last legislative session, it was my understanding that it was going to be reduced from 6.5% to 2.5% upon replenishment of the of the unemployment fund. So that was actually going to be my next question to you: is do you have any idea, given the expenditures out of the unemployment fund that were COVID related and current rates, et cetera, when that is supposed to be replenished and when we could expect that drop in rent tax?
You know, I don't know, but what I do know is last Wednesday, the Department of Economic Opportunity presented to Finance and Tax, to a committee. I think there was something in that PowerPoint deck. Let me send it out. Tiffany, I'll send it to you. And I think there's something in her presentation that discussed that, but I don't know the specifics.
Okay.
Find that out.
Something else I think that I heard from the group, it was the Sadowski Fund was brought up in response to kind of the blatant disregard for the initial intention of the Sadowski Fund, which was to go towards workforce and housing. The Florida legislature this last session said, oh, we'll give you 50%. And even though that might have been a step up from what they had been doing, putting it in the words and a legislative thing finally got the realtors off their kilter. And they put forward a ballot initiative to put it on the upcoming ballot, which I think panicked the legislature. And they were supposed to, we since then pulled that, and it was gonna produce something. Have you guys got any inside knowledge or ideas about what that compromise that they were looking for is forthcoming from the legislature?
Go ahead.
In 24 hours, it completely switched. So, right. I mean, they had said they were filing this, we're taking it, and then it was different. So I have not seen anything yet that I believe was part of the compromise.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they've got really intimidated by that effort, and I think you will see at least from this speaker and this Senate president, I would predict a full funding of that this year. You know, they've got to be able, because the money is still there, if I'm correct, right? It's still kind of sitting there. They decided not to spend it on the ballot initiative, but I think that the message was received, and they will be they're going to be close to full this year.
But just so you know, Florida Realtors spent $8 million defending that position, because I chair the Treasury and Investment Management Committee, and my funds and management went down by $8 million because of what Florida, that's your money, guys. Florida Realtors spent your money defending that housing initiative.
Which initiative?
The Sadowski Fund and utilizing it towards, so the history on that for anybody who's not aware, the Sadowski Fund was set up to basically, it's a tax on title, right? And so the Florida Realtors were like, hey, a tax on title is a tax on transactions. In the transactions that we're in the business of doing, it makes it more expensive. There's going to be less of them. You're pulling into our pockets, right? And so the compromise was like, okay, well, we'll do this tax, but we're going to use it chiefly and exclusively, actually, for the purpose of workforce housing, which realtors say they really care about, right? And so the realtors said, okay, and we struck the bargain. And since then, there's never been a year where the Sadowski Fund was entirely applied to that. It's at the discretion. The legislature has used it as a, walking around money to fund the things that they found important and needed to barter back and forth. So that's the history of it in a nutshell for anyone who hasn't been following since it got put in inception. But and then I think again that when they put it in writing that they were only going to put 50% and they were aspiring to 50%, I think it finally angered enough of the realtors that they said, you know what, if Morgan and Morgan can get marijuana legalized, we can apply money to workforce housing. And they said an initiative in process, which I think quite a few of you have collected signatures for.
I didn't hear that in the meeting with the $8 million got allocated.
So I don't speak of 8 million is a lot of money. I do not know the average number of how much is spent on a ballot initiative, but it's, I think 80, there have been, I'm trying to remember
They're
back.
making it harder and
to
harder to
the-
Oh.
get those
Make
on.
it harder and harder.
That was spent mainly on getting realtors signing petitions.
Yes,
That was
that was not even.
We have a neutralized group of people that we can get signatures from a little cheaper though.
What other questions? Yes.
Well, since Joe broached a fun subject and I saw it on your list, marijuana legalization, I saw that on the list of issues. How do they feel? What do you think is going to happen?
Wow.
It's coming, it's coming. You know, I think you'll probably see it on the 2024 ballot. So the way politics of the state work traditionally, the off-year presidential election, which is this year, 2022, is better for Republicans. That's you know, better for the governor, better for cabinet members. In 2024, the general election, presidential election, is better for Democrats or more liberal-leaning issues. There's a lot of conservatives that are "quote unquote" libertarian that think marijuana should be legalized. I do think that you'll see that effort start shortly after the 22. I mean, it's already been tried to get on the ballot, but I think they're going to refocus. They're going to get the funding, and they're going to create an opportunity to get that on the 2024 ballot. I think it'll pass. And I think the ballot rules now require it to pass twice. But I will say, and Spencer Roach is a legislator from this area that's very involved with cannabis and whether medical marijuana or recreational. But there's an effort in the legislature to get ahead of it, set some regulations and some guardrails for when recreational does pass, because it will. And so I think you'll see an effort in the coming 2 years for the legislature to say, here are some rules that we'll all need to follow if this ever passes.
I do think you'll see more of, we're already seeing it, thoughtful guidelines and guardrails. And I think that that's what they'll continue to try to do. I wouldn't expect anything major this session legislatively, except maybe some of that and paving the way, because they do have a few years to establish.
Perhaps if this is definitely coming down the road, they could look into how to handle the effects of that on the children that are going to school. It's just like the vaping was no big deal. If anybody's got a child in school, it's a big deal right now there. I don't mean a little bit. The vaping that's going on, they hit those things a couple of times. It's 9 cigarettes at the pop. And people kids are getting addicted right now. But it's not just that, it's the little gummies they're getting at the 7-Eleven or whatever. So if they're gonna make these things legal for adults, they better figure out some way for our schools and our children. All right,
I feel
Gonna be
like
interesting.
we have, thank you for that. And sidebar, we had a Tampa legislative representative, Jackie Toledo, that really helped spearhead this new vaping laws. And now we're really cracking down on that. It is horrible. If you all know anybody, our hospitals are seeing it. There's one pack of cigarettes and a jewel. So I think that it is very concerning. What I will say on the marijuana side is there are 23 states now that have recreational, perhaps, I don't know the exact number.
Right.
I believe that we have a thoughtful legislative body and staff that are looking and learning. Colorado was one of the first that made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes as it related to your industry, and a lot of mistakes as it related to economic impact. People stopped traveling to go skiing because mom didn't want Johnny on a lift, going at the skis with someone. So I hope that we have learned from that, and we will have deliberate measures wrapped around whatever that next piece looks like. But federally,
Now's the time to engage, though, if you
yeah,
care.
if you have thoughts or questions, and keep pushing on the vaping, and I can't say it enough. I know we're not here to talk about healthcare, but keep pushing your legislators to make the right decisions where it impacts these decisions.
On the plus side, though, warehouses doubled in value in Colorado.
That is true.
Okay, okay. I gave it for example.
Given your work in DC, there's been, there's rumored at one point that Trump was going to sign a bill legalizing marijuana nationally. Are you seeing any movement on the national front on the marijuana?
I actually thought that the Biden administration would make this a priority because all he has to do is instruct DEA and the state attorney's office, attorney general's office, to not enforce some of these rules. So I actually thought that he would be more active on it than he has been. I think there's just so many priorities for his administration. He doesn't want to use the political capital that it's going to take to get that done. So maybe, who knows if he's going to run again, but I would say the the second.
Isn't it pouring at like 60% almost everywhere? What
It is.
political capital is it?
Well, you still have a Republican, mostly Republican party that still believes in the war on drugs and still believes in the bad effects on kids and the ripple effect through our regulatory and economic system. So it's going to be a measure. You're correct. I think that's why you're seeing it in 23 and 25 and 27 states. But it's not something the federal government has wanted to take on.
Thank you. Rika.
This may be out of left field, I don't know, but what do you hear about the government's position on Cuba and the relationship that we have and the embargo and so forth?
I'm not educated enough to talk about that. I know what I read, but
You know, there was this, through the Biden administration, we followed the less restrictive and the more embracing of the Cuban government. The Trump administration whipsawed that and came back to very closed off Cuba. I think you've seen from the Biden administration a softening, but I don't think, again, with as many things as they've got, priorities as they've got going on, they don't want, especially in Florida, they don't want to use the political capital to completely go back to where the Biden administration was. But I think you're.
Obama or Biden?
I'm sorry, where the Obama administration was, yes. And so that's why you haven't seen the move to less restrictions on cruise ships and travel to Cuba. They've capped, as far as I know, they've capped the reduction in the number of ways you can go to Cuba on the tourism visas are still gone. So I do think that over the course of time, you're going to see incremental actions to lessen that, because that's where he is politically and policy-wise, but you just haven't seen it yet.
Since they exposed my background, just a couple thoughts. And I'm not a member, I'm from Hillsborough County, so I appreciate you letting me share. The vaping issue is just one that schools have to deal with. I heard this morning someone said that the notion that school board meetings is not where, and this is comment, I don't really trust or like either of the parties anymore. School boards are not where those discussions should be had. They should be had at the schools. And that's almost like saying the legislature isn't where we should have the policy discussion. We should have it in the bureaucracy. I mean, principals run schools, but school boards set policy. So as you hear this discussion about the schools, which the vaping issue kind of falls in one of those categories. The war on drugs, marijuana is the gateway. The real war is on fentanyl. Wherever it's coming from, that's what I would be concerned about. Question I had, student loans. That was such a hot topic for a while. Do you hear anything about that?
Certainly on the federal level, no, I don't know if know any updates. It was certainly a hot topic in January, February, and March. And then we saw a lot of funding going back to the historically Black community colleges. I don't know the dollar amount, but I think it started to trickle down in hopes of paying for some of those so that we can have more education open. But I don't really know an update on what is happening with student loans unless it's in this package, which it probably is.
You know, so student loan, there was a provision in the original 3.5 trillion that for loan forgiveness, and I'm trying to remember the provision, whether it was tied to community service or public service, but there is something that has fallen out. There was a provision around free community college, first 2 years of community college. That has fallen out of this package as we go from 3.5 to 2.5 trillion. I know we're talking about a lot of money, but we're actually probably going to end up somewhere between 1.5 and $2 trillion. So you'll continue to see limits in the child tax credits, limits in some of these provisions on Medicare. And so to try to bring that down closer to Senator Manchin, where a senator from West Virginia, who is kind of holding this whole thing up for right now. I will say the comment on cannabis and also hemp. The warehouse space is absolutely a big deal. There's also a move from some of these big growers to buy up a lot of land that is currently being used for hemp that they can easily move to full cannabis. So you're probably seeing in some of your agricultural areas, some of this land becoming scarce and the price going up. That's happening now.
Back to a state issue, Florida is facing an insurance crisis. June Boyd sponsored a really wonderful bill last year, and then it went back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. Got watered down quite a bit, passed by Governor DeSantis, and then got neutered by the court system. And just for y'all's knowledge, I think Florida receives 382 lawsuits related to insurance claims daily. The average in most other states is like 8. So it's, lawyers are on the muck, with all due respect for lawyers in the room. But any possibility of that being revisited this year and addressed, because we're all paying for it?
We're all paying for it. I think we'll continue to. There have been several bills filed, some already discussed in committee meeting. I stay tuned. I feel like they every year try to just nick away. I think Senator Boyd, what a great champion we have in Tallahassee to deal with a very big issue and very deliberately. So I believe he will come back. I haven't seen the bill that he's filed, and maybe as chairman, not sure that he has, but stay tuned. And I would like, as we continue to get some, we'll share that with you too. It sounds like more than we do. Would you add anything to that?
No, I mean, Senator Brandis, I think from the St. Pete area, work with Senator Boyd to try to, there was general acknowledgement that it was, that it was not perfect, and that we have to continue to chip away at it. I do think you'll see more incremental bills this session, and whether they can get across the finish line. It's a really important issue for the state and for everyday citizens, but business owners and business leaders. So I think you're gonna continue to see legislation on that, and we'll see something. We'll make sure we communicate with you on that.
And if there are other specifics, our emails are up here. We are happy to ask us. If we don't know, we'll try to find the answer. May change in a day, but thank you very much. Oh, I do have, can I give away goodies now?
You can't. I have one more question
Yes.
before.
No, please.
There's a lot of ads going on right now about the gambling
Yes.
and whether or not it should be opened up or stay where it is. Could you kind of bracket or define that discussion and what's going on with that and what's being fought after?
I was waiting for somebody to ask that. So you see a lot of ads and talking about the 80 million that will be spent plus on this, the sports betting, which is what is being discussed. If you don't know, who controls gambling in the state of Florida? Seminole Tribe, not the legislature, not anybody else. I think they try to help legislate, but the Seminole Tribe. So what passed would allow potential geofencing of sports betting. And so there had to be federal approval, which the first step happened. There's a constitutional amendment that has to be resolved, the language and wording of that. And there has to be a lot of steps that start to take place so that goes into effect. Now, October was supposed to be, was that, college, what was supposed to go into effect?
Yes,
That was then tied up.
Gaming yeah, right. Sports betting, on-site sports betting, that has not gone into effect yet.
So they were trying to stagger in when you were going to be able to sports bet, and it has not happened yet. We have a lot of things happening now, like redistricting, that could cause a problem, but I do believe they know what passed last year and they're trying to figure out what will happen.
Have you all taken a position as a minister?
Or have you heard from any of your clients? It's a huge revenue generation, right? Billions of dollars for the state of Florida. Should we figure this out? It could take care of our roads and some of our education if we can get this right.
And it's interesting, the tourism leaders, Disney and hoteliers and others are opposed in some respects, but it is going to be huge growth. I mean, there are people, out-of-state people, just chopping at the bit to get in here and expand farther than we have. But it's going to work its way through in the next 6 months. It'll be finished up.
Let them have games.
Right, that's right. So 2 giveaways. Thank you so much for bringing these. Who has been in this industry the longest? Look at you two, pointing to each other. Give me some years.
No, it's Joe.
Joe, how long? I'm too young. You're too young. I'm Josie. You probably need lots of coffee.
You can start at 3 years old. That's fine.
Okay, good. Coffee. Whose birthday is close today?
Wait. You gotta hear how long.
Oh, I know. How
Just
long?
can't give it to them.
I trusted you all.
1974.
Anybody get that?
My birthday was
73.
Your birthday was Thursday? Oh, I can't get this. Oh, Friday. Happy birthday. Whose,
don't use that one.
okay. Whose birthday is close to today? Who has one next week? Anybody in October? Who's in November? November 3rd.
November 3rd.
November 3rd, that's next week. Happy birthday. You win. Yeah, you got a umbrella. Go play your play golf. Well, thank you all.
Put our hands together for this insightful. So this is gonna be online for viewing afterwards. We're gonna have a recording up and going. Please go back into your brokerages and let them know what they missed today, the knowledge that you've gained, and ask them to review and make sure that they're aware of this knowledge. Going back to what our mission is, we do a better job of being commercial realtors and making a better marketplace when we're more informed about the things that are going on legislatively. So thank you for attending today. Please spread this knowledge that you gained and apply it to your businesses. And thank you so much to Shumaker Advisors.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize how reserved this crowd is.
What made you say that?
We're a little more comfortable here than we've been in other schools. We knew we were in Sarasota.
That marijuana stuff. Sarasota High is average.
You are welcome, thank you.
One kid a week since they opened school has been brought off of campus and off of campus.
From vaping or?
Well, from edibles or vaping or.
Sorry, Samuel just started